So today, on this Mother's Day, I'm beginning a brand new short series. It's just going to go for a few weeks during the month of May called All in the Family. And the title of today's sermon is Family Function and Dysfunction. So we're going to talk about family dynamics for a few weeks, which should be fun. I realize that everybody's family is different and everybody's family brings its own set of challenges to the table. But I want to begin this morning by making just a few opening observations, a few premises upon which to start this series. So hear these out. The first one is this, and these are kind of broad. Anybody who claims to be a Christian must first put their faith into action with their family. It does not make any sense to live out our Christian faith everywhere but in our own families. It has to start there. It has to start at home with our spouse, with our children, with our families. Second observation. Family can be the greatest source of joy, comfort, and strength in our lives, and it can also be the greatest source of heartache, frustration, and disappointment in our lives. It has the potential to be both. And most people, if they're honest, have experienced both. Third observation. There is no such thing as a normal family. Everybody's family has drama. Everybody's family has baggage. Everybody's family has stuff that it deals with on an ongoing basis. It's a part of life. And if you think that your family is the only one with drama, and I'm sorry to disappoint you, but you're mistaken. Everybody's family has drama. Normal families don't really exist because every family deals with something. And I can say that with credibility because I'm a pastor. Everybody's family has drama. Fourth, most of the time, family drama and tension is directly related to selfishness, lack of communication, and unmet expectations. Now, not everything, not all problems, but most problems in families can be traced back to those things: selfishness, lack of communication, and unmet expectations. And then the last observation that I want to begin with is this. I believe that many, perhaps even most, of the problems in our culture can be traced back to the breakdown of the family, and that's not just limited to one socioeconomic class. There's great wisdom and insight in the Bible for how we can live as families and how we can treat each other as family members. What are some of those texts? Well, many of them you know. 1 Corinthians 13, love is patient, love is kind, love is not envious or boastful or arrogant or rude, it does not insist on its own way, it is not irritable or resentful, it does not rejoice in wrongdoing, it rejoices in the truth, it bears all things. It believes all things, it hopes all things, and it endures all things. Love never ends, Paul says. 1 John chapter 4, let us love one another because love is from God. Everyone who loves is born of God and knows God. And whoever does not love does not know God, for God is love. Matthew 7, the Sermon on the Mount. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And then Paul writes these words to the Ephesians this morning, chapter 5. Be subject to one another out of reverence for Christ. Wives, be subject to your husbands. Husbands, love your wives. Now, this particular text is controversial. A lot of you ladies didn't think you'd get to hear this passage today on Mother's Day, your day, right? People often resent this text because they say that it's dated and it's demeaning to women. And when you read it, that's understandable. But we need to remember a few things. Paul wrote this letter to the Ephesians many, many years ago during a different age when the role of women had not evolved like it has today. Women were viewed as second-class citizens. Women simply did not have the status that they do today. In fact, women didn't have the same status 30 years ago that they do today. And the problem with this text also is that it's inconsistent. It says, wives, be subject to your husbands. Husbands, love your wives. If it said, wives, be subject to your husbands. Husbands, be subject to your wives. Or wives, love your husbands. Husbands, love your wives. We probably wouldn't have as big of a problem with it. That might be better. But it was written in a particular context, and our context today is very different. But here's the bottom line. Husbands and wives must be subject to one another. They must respect one another. They must honor one another. They must love one another. They must work as a team, and Christ must be a part of that team. There's a guy in Atlanta that I have a lot of respect for named Andy Stanley. And I enjoy reading his books. I enjoy watching some of his podcasts. He serves a big church called North Point Church. And Andy's done a lot of incredible work on this area of marriage and family life throughout the years. And he talks about how falling in love is easy. He says it just takes a pulse. He says we all have the ability to fall in love, and we often do it for the wrong reasons, and we do it far too quickly. But staying in love, he says, is the challenge. He says that when we meet somebody and we start dating and we get serious and when we get engaged, we have what he calls a big box of desires, dreams and wishes that we bring to the relationship, ideas about the way that life is going to be. We desire to be treated a certain way by our spouse. We desire to one day live in a certain kind of house. We desire to have a certain number of kids. We desire to do or not do certain chores around the house. We desire to schedule a certain kind of schedule in our marriages. We desire to have a set amount of time to ourselves. We desire to be loved and admired and respected and supported and all these other things. We have this perfect picture of how life is supposed to be in our mind. And then he says we get married and we march down the aisle and we say our vows, for better or worse, for richer or for poor, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish. And we immediately turn those desires, those wishes, those dreams into expectations. And if things don't happen the way that we expect them to happen, the way that we had hoped that they would happen, then we get disappointed very, very easily. We get disillusioned very, very easily. You see, every marriage goes through disappointment. It's just a matter of how are you going to deal with that? How are you going to respond to that? And what Stanley says is the problem in many marriages and in many families is the focus on I. I want this, I want that, I want things to be this way, cater to my wants and my needs. And if you end up with two people in the same marriage, or even one person in the same marriage that's solely focused on I, that leads to problems. Because marriage is a team sport. It has to be. It doesn't work if one person is always giving and the other person is always taking. You know, I've always said that marriage is a huge step in the direction of unselfishness, and then having children is a giant leap in the direction of unselfishness. But marriages and families that are just focused on I, me, what I want, just don't work. I've done a lot of weddings in 12 years of ordained ministry, and I've seen a lot of things. I've seen a lot of family dynamics. But when I meet with couples in premarital counseling, I ask them a few questions. The first question is, what do you think it is that makes or breaks marriage? And a lot of the answers to that question are words that start with C, not all of them. A focus on Christ, commitment, compromise, compatibility, companionship, cooperation, compassion, common interest. We talk about that. And then usually in the next session, I dive into what I call the 5 big topics that I think every couple should talk about. And those topics are faith, family, friends, career and location, and then money. Faith matters because marriage has been instituted by God and blessed by Jesus Christ. And when two people decide to get married, faith should be at the center of it. I'm always amazed at how many people want to have their wedding at a church, and they want a minister to officiate it, and they want scripture to be read and the Lord's Prayer to be prayed. But when they get married, faith and church are not a part of that marriage. It doesn't make any sense to me, because faith and spiritual growth have to be a part of any family life. Then we talk about family, families of origin. What type of marriage did their parents show? Do they come from a divorced home or not? Is their relationship with their immediate family going to get in the way of their own marriage progressing? If their mom or dad are still their soulmate, that's going to be a problem. And then we talk about children, how long they want to wait before they start trying to have children. How many children do they want to have? What will life be like once kids come into the picture? Then we talk about friends. Married couples need to be around other married couples that they can relate to, that will give them support and encouragement. That's why we push couples small groups here at Woodmont so much. But the company you keep in life, as couples, as an individual, says a lot about the type of person that you are. The people that are around you will influence you for better or for worse. Career and location, are they happy in their career? Are they happy in Nashville? Do they want to move somewhere else? Are they in agreement about staying here, moving? Will the wife work or stay home once kids come into the picture? Those types of questions. And then we talk about money, because research shows that money is the number one source of stress and strain in marriages. Money manifests itself in a lot of different ways. It has to do with expectations. It has to do with lifestyle, spending, saving, giving back. If couples are not on the same page when it comes to issues of money, that's going to lead to problems, and I see that all the time. But sometimes money becomes a substitute for an authentic, healthy relationship. Money does not equal quality time or love. It's not a substitute. It never has been. It never will be. And couples have to communicate about money, their attitudes and their expectations, because like Andy Stanley said, it's really easy to turn desires into expectations and then to not have those expectations met. Now let me say a word about children. Many marriages seem to get in trouble when kids come along. Why? Because all of the attention goes into raising the kids, and the marriage gets neglected. Kids are wonderful. They're great. I have 3 of them. I love them. But they can be exhausting. And they can take all of your time and your attention and your energy, and then you give your spouse what's left over, if there is anything that's left over. And usually I find that couples don't intend for this to happen, but so often it happens. Let me say a word this morning about this idea of function versus dysfunction. And we'll talk more about this next week. Every family has some degree of dysfunction. It's just different in the different contexts, in the different situations. And I told you, I get to see it as a minister, so I can say that with credibility. What are the things that we need to focus on in our marriages, in our families, with our children, with our grandchildren, with our siblings, if we want to have a healthy, functioning family life? I'll leave you with a few thoughts and we'll pick up next week. The first is honesty and trust. If you tell the truth, you've got nothing to worry about. And remember, trust is built over time. It's the currency in all relationships. Trust takes a long time to build up, but only a short time to tear down. Without trust, there's not much left. Accepting responsibility for your actions, admitting when you're wrong, communicating openly, keeping your word, apologizing when necessary. Trust is important. The second thing I would say is respect and mutual support, which includes being attentive to each other's needs. Stanley talks about how there is one question that if we could incorporate this into our family life more often, you'd be amazed at the difference it would make. And you know what that one question is? How can I help? How can I help? That we can all ask that question. How can I help? What can I do to make your life easier? That can transform a family dynamic. How can I help? Every person brings unique gifts and qualities into a relationship, and nobody is the total package because everybody has shortcomings and everybody has character flaws, but we must find ways to respect and support our spouses and significant others, which means that we have to accept them for who they are and not feel like we have to change them. Attentive listening is very important. And men are really bad about this, by the way. We can pretend like we're listening, but we're not really listening. And then when we get asked a question about what somebody just said, we get in trouble. So many times men just want to fix things. We're fixers. And women don't want to fix things, they want to talk about things. So a guy will say, well, tell me the problem, I'll fix it. And the wife will say, no, I just want to talk about it. If you just talk about it with me, that'll let me know that you care. And if we don't find a solution, so what? And men are like, well, why would we want to talk about it if we're not going to fix it? We need to fix it. No, I just want to talk about it. We talk about it, I know you care, I know you're listening, I know you love me. No, I want to fix it. We got to bridge that gap somehow. Third, negotiation and fairness. In any relationship, conflict will happen. It's inevitable. It's a part of life. But the way that we handle conflict matters. We must work hard to find solutions that are agreeable to everybody involved, which means that we have to compromise. We don't always have to agree in order to respect each other's opinions, but there's no issue or problem that is more important than the relationship itself. And when somebody has to win, that usually means that the relationship loses. And I remember what a guy named Rod Katitsky, he's a therapist in town, he used to teach classes here. He used to say, you can be right or you can be in relationship, and the choice is yours. The fourth thing, non-threatening behavior. Or to put that differently this morning, low levels of drama. The Bible deals with the subject of anger. An angry outburst can be a love buster. It's important to talk and to act in a way that other people feel safe and comfortable. When threats are made and emotions run high, there's damage that can be done. And so being calm is a good thing because anger does a lot of damage in families when we lose our cool. And then lastly, intimacy and love. And intimacy is different from relationship to relationship, but there's nothing worse than being in a marriage or being a part of a family and still feeling like you're all alone. And yet there are many people who live like that every day. Paul said love is patient and love is kind and love is not envious or boastful or arrogant or rude. Jesus said, I give you a new commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you. And remember, love is a verb, not just a noun. It's something we do, not just something that we have. Dysfunction in marriage and in family occurs when we neglect it, when we take it for granted, when we stop trying to put forth the effort, when we think that everything revolves around us. But I'm also aware that there are times in life when marriages, families don't make it. And you know what? Just as the church is there to support couples that are married and raising their family, the church also needs to be there to support folks who are going through a divorce or going through a difficult situation, because that's what the church is. A place of love, a place of grace, a place of hope, a place of warmth, forgiveness, second chances. Family is not easy. Nobody ever said it was. But it does require intentionality and unselfishness and forgiveness and trust and honesty and respect. These are the things that matter. And we'll continue this conversation next week. Amen.